Hey everybody, how's it going everybody? Today we're gonna do a little experiment. We usually do this in class, but during the pandemic can't really do that, so this is where we're at, and so we're gonna try to do this. By the way, if you wanna try this at home, you can try this at home, but if you're gonna try this at home, there's a couple things you need to do. You need to get some type of a jar. It could be like a Prego jar with a metal lid, a pickle jar with a metal lid. But one of the things you gotta do at the start before you do anything else is you gotta take the jar lid and you gotta put some little dimples and dents so that on the bottom side of the jar lid, there are these little bumps. And you could do that with like a screwdriver or a sharp point, something like that. And you take like a little hammer and you just tap it, and you make some dents on the jar lid. If you don't do that, this will not really work fully the way you need to. Second thing you need is you need a container, all right? Like a cup that will sit on top of your jar. And on that cup, you want to have a small amount of water at the bottom. And if you read the lab sheet that I gave you in class, you would take some ice. And I'm going ahead and I'm doing that right now. I'm getting some ice in that container. And you would also take a little bit of table salt. It says in the directions to take a teaspoon of table salt. And you would want to take that and you would want to put that into your ice. The reason you're going to do that is it's going to make the ice colder. And when it makes the ice colder, this is going to work better. And so you would get that set up first so that when you do the next part of what I'm going to show you, you would want to be putting that on top of your container like so. But you're going to need to put something else in the container before we start. So another thing you would need to do is you would need to take your container that you are using, whatever the container is, and you want to put some normal water. I'm still going to keep talking right now, but you want to just put some normal water in your jar and rinse it out so that you don't see really anything on the sides when you're starting. Next, you will want to make sure you have a cell phone flashlight handy. For today, since I'm using my cell phone to actually film, I'm going to just use a normal flashlight for this, and that's something that I'll be using as well. All right, so those are some things that you need if you are going to do this. You also will need to look at the questions that are on the lab sheet that I've linked on the playlist. But anyway, for those of you who are just watching this who aren't in my class, you can do most of the rest of this on your own. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and we're going to show you a couple of other things real quick as we're getting going here. So I'm going to grab the camera real quick and we're going to do a couple of things together right now. One of the things we're going to do real quick is we're going to just go show a couple of other things that we have set up. First of all, I have one set up in the room that's been going for a little bit of time so that we can refer to it if we need to. We'll do something with that a little bit later. I'm going to do something else here real quick. I'm going to grab a little bit of this ice and I'm going to put a little bit of this ice into this cup right here. I just want to put a little bit of this in this cup because I want to show everybody something here real quick. So I want you to notice that this cup right now, there is no condensation on this cup. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to show you a different thing here real quick. So on this little burner right here, you see that we have that I've got this heat plate set up and I've got some warm water that's happening here. And what's going on here is that the heat from the burner is going into the water. By the way, would that be endothermic or exothermic? Think about that a little bit. Is if the heat is going into the water, is that endothermic or exothermic? Just be thinking about that. Also, you can't see it, but above this container right here, there is evaporation occurring and there's a lot of water vapor that is coming off of this. To prove that to you, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this cup that I just grabbed a second ago and I'm gonna put this cup that's now got a little bit of cold on the outside, I'm gonna put it above this beaker. And when I do that, the water vapor that you can't see is going to quickly condense onto that cup and you're gonna be able to see that. And check it out, you can now see that that cup has tons of water vapor that condensed on the outside of that cup. And so you want to keep that in mind because we're going to use that knowledge here in a moment to see some other things. So if you're at home, the next thing you would need to do is you would need to carefully boil some water. And that's what I've got going on in this container. But once it's boiled, you want to turn it down a little bit. And what you're going to do is you're going to take and you're going to take a hot pad of some type, and you're going to take and you're going to pour. I'm using my fun little frog here. It's a fun frog hot pad so that I don't burn myself. And I'm going to put some of that water, that hot water, into the bottom of that jar. You don't need a ton of it. You don't need a ton of it, but you need a little bit. And you're going to bring that back to where you have that ice thing that you created, and you're going to bring that back. Okay, and so you can see here that I have brought that back, and I'm bringing it over here, and I'm going to make this a little easier for you to see. All right, and what we're going to do right now is we're going to take and put the lid back on. Okay, and we're going to put this back on right here, and we're going to put this on top of here. It's very important that you do this next part pretty quickly, but you want to kind of shine a light into this container. All right, and you want to look and see if you notice anything occurring. Okay, and you want to see if you notice anything at all occurring. Now, the next part that's a little tricky is you have to let this sit. All right, you have to let this sit for at least 3 or 4 minutes. And at the end of 3 or 4 minutes, what you're going to do is you're going to carefully take this off, the ice off, and you're going to set it down, and you're going to carefully remove the lid and look at those little dimple things that you made on the bottom. But again, you have to set a timer right now for 3 to 4 minutes. Since this, I want to make the video where I have a tremendously large amount of time to do that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to move you over here right now to this container where I've had this one going for more than 4 minutes. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to carefully try to show you something that you should do. So again, when you do this, you want to carefully remove the ice that's got the salt on it from the lid. And you want to very, 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 very carefully lift the lid up. When you lift the lid up, I'm going to try to show you the underside of the lid. Try being the opportune word. You're going to look at the dimples. And you can see the dimples on my lid, if you're looking, what has happened to them. All right, so that is, again, what you're doing if you are at home and you want to actually see it. Now, I want you to notice that on my jar also, that since I let it go for a really long time on my jar, one of the things you want to notice, all right, is that there's some things on the side of my jar like this that have occurred because enough of what happened on those dimples, it's filled enough that it started to do this in my jar. And this is evidence that something is collected enough up here that something started to come back here. And so if you let this go long enough, again, you're going to start to see some things occurring. All right. So again, we're going to come back to this one now for a second, and we're going to look at this one. It hasn't been long enough on a timer yet for me to actually look at those dimples on that one that I made on the underside of that jar. So lots of things are occurring, all right? And so this is what you are going to do if you want to try this at home. I also am going to try to show you one other thing with my jar that I didn't show you before, just to try to help you with something that when you were filling it with the hot water at another spot, you might have also been able to see something, but it was kind of hard to see. So I'm going to take the camera over again, and I'm going to try to show you one other thing. I'm going to try to be careful here when I'm taking this lid off. I don't know if we can see anything on this one. Yeah, it started to do it on this one, but again, I would have probably needed to let it go a little bit longer. So we're going to go ahead and take the camera back over here one more time, and we're going to let you see one other thing, try to let you see one other thing that happened in this jar. And so I'm going to move the camera to the jar a little bit, and I'm going to try to show this one more time. Remember, I'm trying to show you one other thing. I'm going to put a little bit more of the hot water in here. Okay, and I want you to kind of look at the jar while I'm kind of shining a light in it a little bit. Try to shine a light in it a little bit. And I'm going to try to let you see something. It's a little hard to carry this jar while I'm shining the light in it, but we're going to carry this back over here again. And I'm trying to give you a chance to make the observation again one more time with the light on inside of this jar. So here we go. We're going to try to see this. I don't know if we're going to be able to see it or not, but we're going to try to see this inside of the jar. So we're going to try to see this. I don't know if we'll be able to, but we're going to try to see if we can see anything happening inside the jar, not just on the sides of the jar's container. All right. So again, if you want to try this at home, you kind of got to be patient a little bit. And when I say patient a little bit, what I mean is if you are trying to see everything you're supposed to see, you got to let it go even longer than 3 to 4 minutes. But after about 4 minutes, you can look at those dimples on the bottom of the jar. And you, after time, should be able to see some things starting to occur in your jar, where maybe you'll also be able to see these things that look like they're coming down the sides of your jar. And that is evidence of something that happened up here and got big enough that it started to actually release. You notice that we don't really have any of those yet here. All right. And so one of the things you want to be thinking about as you're concluding this and doing this is you want to be thinking about, hey, how is this similar? Is this similar at all? This is kind of like a closed system. And if you think of the earth a little bit, the earth is sort of like a closed system, okay? The earth is sort of like a closed system, kind of like this. And we have water down here that we didn't heat it up with the sun, but we used a burner to heat this water up. Something happened to that water, which we saw occurring on the sides and in the air. It's obviously true that it's happening in the air of this container, because when we looked at the jar, on the bigger jar that had gone for at least 4 minutes, we saw something forming at the top of the jar where it was cooler. And our earth, we know that it's also cooler as you go at higher elevations. And so something was happening up here at the top of our jar, just like something happens with our water vapor in real life when it goes up. And then if we let that go long enough, something else happened to the water here. When enough of it gathered here, remember we saw on the bigger jar evidence of something on the side that meant that something up here had to come back down to here. So there's lots of stuff going on. So how is this like our Earth system? What's going on inside of this jar? What's going on inside of this jar that's like the real Earth? Okay, and what would that be called? So there's several questions now for you to be doing. There's tons of questions that you need to be looking at on our sheet if you're in my class. And what we're going to be doing, all right, is we're going to actually be answering those questions together right now to try to get some points. If you're not in on our Zoom, you will have to submit the answers to those questions and me in a typed email response. But for those of you who are here, for those of you who aren't in my class, one of the things you want to try to do is figure out, okay, what just happened inside that jar that's similar to the Earth? All right, so hopefully you'll realize that we've just completed something. All right, and I'm going to give a little hint for my kids in class and for people at home. It started down here. Something started down here. It went up here, and then it came back down here. So it started down here, went up here, and then it ended up coming back down here. So that's got a name, and maybe you'll be able to figure out what it is. And the other thing to be thinking about is, did, on the one that we let go for a long time right over here, did we actually get it to rain in a jar? And you got to be thinking that over time, did we make it rain in the jar? By the way, maybe it's not rain the way you think of rain, all right? But did it actually rain in the jar? Something for you to ponder and think about. So anyway, that was this lab. Hopefully you watched this in class, and now we should have about 30 minutes or so to answer some questions. We're going to try to answer some of those questions together, and you get a chance to do that with me. Hope you're having a great day, and we'll be answering those today. And then don't forget that the holidays are coming soon. At least that's when it was when I was making this video. So let's go ahead and try to answer some questions from this, and have a great day. If you're not in my class, have a great day. I'll see you later. Bye.